Hello, everyone, from Common Room Radio. I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
I'm Sarah K. Bazant, and welcome to Disney Villain Deathmatch.
Bum, 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 bum.
Today, we have a very special guest in the studio with us, our very own Vinton Bayne.
Well, hello.
Hello.
I'm so excited to be podcasting with you again, Vinton.
I know.
It's been too long.
Oh, yeah, you guys haven't podcasted since Mighty Fine Shindig.
That's right.
Our Firefly podcast.
Yeah, because the couple of times I was on Excelsior was because you were gone.
Yep,
That's true. Yeah. Yep. Except for the Wonder Woman one where we all came together.
That's true. That was the last time we podcast together.
Was the
not
last
counting
time.
live shows or things like that.
Yes, but that was in June, so
it's
that
been a
was
while.
a million years ago.
Years.
It feels like. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. God, that was a great movie.
It was so good. Yeah, it comes out very, very soon. I'm very excited for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I'm very thrilled. So today on Disney Villain Deathmatch, we are in round 12. Can you believe it? We are so close to our grand finale.
Very exciting.
It's amazing. It's astounding. I'm so excited. Today we are doing Frollo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame versus Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. And Vinton has a very special treat in store for us. If you listen to our superhero, superpowered comics and movie podcast, Excelsior, you'll know that Vinton does this really cool thing that we call flipping over the VHS, where he gives us a brief rundown of whatever it is we're talking about. And it's always hysterical, always amazing, and I love it very, very much. And he's going to do that for us with these Disney villains.
That's right. So let's flip over the VHS on this battle. It's the battle of the century as fairy evil meets real life bigotry. The only closer battle would be who has sharper facial features. Can a genocidal religious pyromaniac overcome a nightmarish dragon lady, or will the mistress of all evil show him the true meaning of hellfire? Can we talk about Frollo without drawing clear modern-day political parallels?
Oh, no.
We'll find out as these sadist titans clash. It's Claude Frollo versus Maleficent.
That was amazing.
That was amazing.
Thank you. Oh, my gosh. That was so good.
Can you tell us, Vinton, about your personal history with Disney?
Yeah, so I grew up with a lot of Disney in my life.
Yeah.
My grandmother to this day just loves collecting Disney movies. She's always been a huge fan. So anytime I was at grandma's house, she had all the VHSs. She had all of
Yes. I remember those from when I was a kid. You'd go over to somebody's house and they'd have like the wall full,
Right.
and they're like,
They're
Yep.
like the plastic
Yeah.
ones that you can like pop open.
Yeah, the clamshells, I think they call them.
Clamshells.
Yeah, and growing up, my three favorite movies, and still my three favorite Disney movies, are Robin Hood, Jungle Book, and 101 Dalmatians.
Oh, okay.
Maybe in that order? Probably in that order, actually. Robin Hood's definitely my number one. So, and Jungle Book's close second. Mostly, it's a musical thing. Like
Yeah.
the music in those movies is just spot. 101 Dalmatians, has a lot to do with Roger.
Yes.
He was my idol as a child of what I wanted to grow up to be as a man. And that's why I aspire to owning a pipe and smoking a pipe and playing a stand-up bass. And
All of
those
which
are
you do.
both things
So
that I
you
can
nailed
do.
it.
All these things,
I nailed it.
Now you just need 101 Dalmatians, I guess.
Yeah.
They start with 18. That's probably a much more manageable number.
Yeah, I should just have one, maybe. That would be nice. Just an homage, not a direct copy. I also really like Mary Poppins. I think Mary Poppins is a fantastic movie.
Are you really excited for Mary Poppins Returns?
Because Lin-Manuel Miranda, yes. Before that, I would not have been. Just because I was like, oh, don't destroy these things I love.
Well, a lot of people thought that it was going to be a reboot. It's actually going to be a sequel, which
Right,
I think
which will be
is-
interesting.
yeah.
But that's where I fell in love with Dick Van Dyke as a child, and I loved the Dick
yes.
Van Dyke show when I was little. It was great. But also, shout out to Daphne from a previous episode. I also really love Escape from Witch Mountain. That movie was fantastic.
Excellent. Good. She'll be so happy to hear that.
And while I do really love Pixar movies and would want to rank them up there, I actually don't count them as Disney movies. I just can't.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like a completely separate thing to me. And if I'm going to count those, I have to count the Muppets. And I love Jim Henson too much, and he would just destroy all of the Disney movies for me.
Wait, if you're going to count Pixar, you have to count
They're
the
owned.
Muppets?
They're owned by Disney, and they're released under Disney. So all the Muppet movies say Disney Muppets,
I
just like
didn't
Disney
even know
Pixar.
that.
Yeah. So if we're gonna count Pixar, I feel like I have to count Muppets
Sure.
too.
If you're going to count Pixar and Muppets, then you got to count Star Wars, then you got to count
Yeah.
Marvel, and then
It's
it becomes
true.
this
Oh,
whole
then it
big
became
thing.
then I already have such a hard time nailing down favorites. That's not going to be easy.
That's fantastic. Are you guys ready to talk about these villains?
I am so ready.
Excellent. So first we're going to talk about our first impressions. Who do you want to start with, Vin? You want to start with Frollo or Maleficent?
Oh, that's a tough choice. I guess let's just jump into Frollo. Let's
I
jump
guess
right
so.
in there.
Let's get the badness out. Ugh.
Well, Well, and I say let's start with Frollo, but I actually have to start with a bit of a contrast with him, I think, because I really came into this thinking Maleficent was just going to win this real easily for me. I mean, she's magic. She turns into a dragon. What's Frollo got to offer? But I hadn't seen these movies in a long time.
Right.
And sitting down to watch them again, I forgot just how villainous Frollo is.
He really is just straight up
And
evil.
yeah, the difference is it's a difference between fairy, magical, evil, like I can turn into a dragon and cast some spells, versus this is a guy that we really have in history. Not him specifically, but this is the type of person that we have.
Yes.
And not only that, but there's political parallels to be drawn to modern day that make things also very complicated, that make this way too real.
Yes.
And so when you're seeing Frollo in this film, and you're seeing him in his bigotry and his genocidal tendencies, he's totally okay with just wiping out a whole race of Romani people just because they're street performers that he doesn't like, and he feels better than them, and he feels like it's his religious duty. It's like, oh, this is too real. And it's very hard to deal with. And then you look at the fact that he took in this hunchback because it was his religious duty. But by the way, that church clergyman, awful dude. He looks like a kind of a hero in the story. He knew that Frollo was a bad guy wanting to throw that baby in the well, and instead of going, I'll raise him, he said, you have to raise him. What? That was a horrible decision.
That's a pretty good point.
He's like, what are you doing? Just hanging out down there in the church? You raise him.
Why didn't you raise
He's like,
Quasimodo?
you were going to kill him? I bet you'd be a great dad. Not okay.
That's a really good point.
But
wow.
then you think about him raising this kid and telling him every day, you're a monster, society hates you, everyone's going to hate you, and you deserve damnation. Let's go through the alphabet to remind you of that.
Oh my gosh.
It's just like, this guy is terrible.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So that's my initial reaction. It's a rough one.
Anything to add, Elizabeth?
No, I don't think so. Just at least not from the Frollo point of view, except that, yeah, it is. It's hard to shake that kind of malevolence and that kind of, especially that kind of this we talked about before. I just did a lot of S's. Especially because we talked about before the last time we talked about Frollo, that kind of self-righteous villainy that just because you see that your way is the only way and that you're doing the work of God, how terrifying that really is.
Right. Yeah, no, he's a bad man.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to continue because he's not fun to talk about.
It's true.
And if you're talking about just like what you think of the character when he first shows up in the movie, the very first thing he does is kill a Romani woman asking for sanctuary on the steps of a church by bashing her head into the stairs, and then takes her baby and decides, I'm going to throw it into a well.
Yeah.
Like, that's the opening thing for this guy. That's our opening impression.
Wow. Gosh.
He's a terrible, terrible human. Let's move on to Maleficent.
Maleficent.
The evil fairy lady.
She's so cool, though.
She's
She
really very
is so cool. And that's the thing. My first impression with her is that she is what evil is supposed to look like. And she is that cool evil. She is that Hot Topic evil, perhaps. She has the cool horns, the cape that's almost a character to itself.
Ooh.
And she just like walks with this air of I am evil and I'm above you and I am a queen. And it's real cool, guys.
It's very good. Yeah.
100% would wear.
Yeah. Iconic.
You would wear that outfit?
Yes. I mean, not like to the store, but, you know.
To a ball?
Would dress up. Yeah.
Would
absolutely.
cosplay Maleficent?
Yes.
A villainy ball?
Yes. Would cosplay Maleficent. Would not cosplay Frollo, for example.
I don't know. Could you cosplay like end of the movie Frollo, where you're basically just cosplaying as like a burn dude?
You, but yeah. I saw it all at Dragon Con, you guys. You can cosplay anything.
That's true.
Anything.
Yes.
Anything you want. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about our villains' motivations then. What was it that they were wanting to do in their respective films? Let's again start with Frollo really quick. Vinton, what did Frollo want to do? What were his motivations? What's his whole deal?
Well, Frollo is a classic case of like this religious righteousness and hatred for the other, to the point of murderous hatred for the other, and feeling like he so much so needs to be above everything that anything that is not like him needs to be dead and down and damned, to prove to himself that he is above them and that he is more pure, to earn this righteousness, maybe, perhaps. And it's really gross. It's awful. And even to the point where when he himself feels those feelings for Esmeralda, he throws it right back on her. There's that terrible, terrible rapey scene when he's holding her arm behind her back and he sniffs her hair and she says, I know what you were thinking.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, this is a kid's movie.
Yeah.
I forgot what is happening. And then at the end when he's about to burn her at the stake and he's like, one last chance to be with me before I burn you. It's like, For real, dude?
For real, guy?
What is happening? And he's like, if I can't have you, then I'll burn down all of Paris.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then.
So
He's gonna win. He's so bad.
no, he's not. You know why? Because Maleficent has magic, and there's no way that Frollo can beat her in our final category. But we'll see when we get there.
Oh, I just don't know. God, he's such a bad guy.
We cannot listen. I'm sorry. When you think of Disney villain, does literally anybody think of Frollo? No, they think of Maleficent.
I don't know.
Ursula.
I checked a few polls, and some of them online, he did win.
That's because he's legitimately a fear. He's
I'm just saying. Okay.
This isn't just who is like literally the most evil Disney villain. It's who's the most Disney villain.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. We actually got some feedback the other day by somebody saying that they really felt that it should be about who is the most evil. But it's
I
really
don't want
not
to do
as
that.
fun that way.
You want to know
It
why?
really
Because
isn't.
2017 is a total mess, and I don't want to dwell in that.
Well, and that's not the thing that we get excited about when it comes to Disney movies. We get excited about Disney villains. There's something that we like about the way Disney villains are created, and that's something that's important in story that we should relate, maybe, or at least be interested in the story of the villain in some manner. And when it comes to real villainy like Frollo, you lose a lot of that.
Right. And I'm not saying that we should just like push like true darkness and evil like under the rug and completely ignore it and act like that stuff doesn't exist. I'm just saying that's not what this show is about. This particular show, not about that.
It is interesting to note that Disney actually made Frollo more of a villain than he is in the original source material book. Originally in the book, it was the Romani people who ditched the hunchback and left him for dead and stole Esmeralda, a non-Romani baby, because she was pretty and he was ugly. And then it was Frollo that came in, and he's a super compassionate dude in the book, even though he does do awful things as well.
Sure.
He's known for his like compassion, and he finds the baby and decides to raise it. And even when the Quasimodo goes deaf in the bell tower from the bells, he teaches him sign language because he wants him to be able to communicate and things.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
It's really weird that you're like, hey, we're just gonna make him this super awful dude.
That's really
very
interesting.
But spoilers for that book, it's really racist, guys.
Oh, also everyone dies in the end. Like nobody gets out alive. Everybody burns and is killed and murdered. And Paris is a bad place in that time period. I guess. Did you read Les Mis? It's all the same.
I never read the book, but I've read about it, and I don't want to read that book.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I didn't realize.
But we were going to talk about Maleficent, I think. So let's talk about Maleficent's motivations.
She's upset that she didn't get invited to this party here.
So petty.
Which is interesting. And obviously, you're going into this, if you look at it, you're like, there has to be a backstory here. The fairies know that she's evil. The king and queen didn't want to invite her. So there's something they know of her, and she has done something to where they go, she's evil and she needs to not be here. And so that's interesting, but we don't get that. And even the oldest fairy tales of this story don't even have her in it. It was just a prophecy about this happening to the princess.
Oh, interesting.
And then slowly she was added into the stories as time went on.
See, Disney knows that you need to have a villain. They need to they know this about children's films.
And they made her like way more magical. Like the dragon and all this was never a part of the original story. She was just an old witch lady who cast a thing.
Right.
So it was a little bit different. But yeah, her motivation is that she's just upset at something, and she just has this like
Kind of an overreaction, I feel like.
I mean, if you're one of the most powerful beings in the land, which if you can turn into a dragon and put a curse on a princess and all these other things, and people don't invite you to a party, even like as a formality, like maybe she wasn't even like interested in going, but like just wanted the invite. I mean, like.
But I do think it's interesting.
Her finger and die, though?
I do think it's interesting that she doesn't at all seem murdery. If you watch this movie, she really wants people not to die. As a matter of fact, except for she does curse her to die. But then later on, when she finds out that that's not the curse, she still pricks her and just lets her go to sleep. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. I'll just leave her there. And then when she gets the prince, she tells her minions, "Hey, be gentle with him. I just want to lock him up. I don't want to kill him." And then the whole village falls asleep, and she's like, "Yeah, I really hate them. I'll just let them be alone. Though they're all asleep. It's fine."
See, she's super chill.
She doesn't want to kill anybody.
An invitation to the party.
She showed up and really angry, curses the child. That's fine, but she didn't bash the queen's head in on some stairs and then throw the princess down a well. She didn't do that.
That's true. It's very accurate.
And the curse itself, it wasn't for. It was for the princess to die, sure, but only at a certain age, under a very certain circumstance. Thanks for all the loopholes, I guess, and explaining it. By the way, it's kind of weird. I think she just really wants people to be sad. That's her thing?
Maybe so.
Because she
Maybe
wants
she's-
the kingdom to be sad
Yes.
by having raised this daughter and then her dying or her going to sleep forever. And then she wants the prince to be sad. She's like, think about what you could be doing, but you're going to be here being sad instead. And then you get out and she's going to be young and you're going to be old and you're both going to be sad. I love sad people.
It's very torturous. Yeah.
But she's also like bad at her job, I think. Because when the prince does get out and like, her minions fail, of course, that's what minions do. They don't do a great job at being minions. That's the trope. She's like, okay, what can I do to stop him? I have all these magical spells. I'm just going to raise up a bunch of thorns. Surely he can't get out. Oh, you have a sword? Oh, I guess that wasn't a good idea. That was pointless, huh? Maybe I can do the dragon thing. Yeah, I'll do the dragon thing this time. And she just flies down there with the dragon and then just gets stabbed and falls. Like, that was okay. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair,
the thorns really
Prince
bothers
Philip-
me because it seems
I
like
feel
not
the
a big
thorns were
thing.
So cool, though.
It looks cool. It
looks
does.
so cool in the swirling clouds up above. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very
But just him like
impressive
slicing through it,
magic.
it's like you could have like
But
done
he's got a
anything, and that
magical
was what
sword
you
given
did.
to him by like 3 other fairies.
True.
Is
True.
the other thing. Philip
Yeah.
is not really doing a whole lot under his own volition or his own power. It's all the
True.
3 good fairies who are doing all
I
this
will
work.
also say I don't believe she died at the end of the film. Her cloak is the only thing sitting there, and a huge puff of smoke goes up in the air, and that's to me her disappearing off somewhere else.
Oh,
Nice.
could be. I like that.
The sequel does not support that, but we
That's
don't talk about the
scorch
sequels
mark
here.
in
So
Is there a
So-
Sleeping Beauty sequel?
yes, I think so.
Like a Disney straight to DVD
I
sequel?
think so.
What?
I just saw it when I was looking up stuff that something said about the sequel, her coming back because her crow gets unstoned and then finds her and resurrects her, I guess, or
That's
something.
so
I
we're
don't know.
never. Okay, we're gonna have to investigate this later because
didn't
I
look
know
into it.
about straight to DVD sequels, but I did not know that there was one for Sleeping Beauty. That's really interesting.
I'm so
So
amused that the crow was stoned.
Stoned, yeah, very stoned.
he was
Very
just like,
good.
forget this, y'all. I just need to go chill. It'll be fine. So let's talk about their lairs. So I think that we talked about this in the first episode that we had Frollo in. He doesn't really have like a traditional lair.
Yeah, all we get to see is a room, and we don't know where that room is, but
Yes.
it's a gigantic room that
Presumably,
only has.
it's in the church or near a church,
Well,
or
you can see Notre Dame from it, so you see like him looking out the window.
Oh,
So you have
okay.
like a geographic setting, but you don't really know what the building is.
you're so smart. I never would have figured that out.
But it's just a big like hallway-looking stone room
Yeah.
with a chair, a giant cross above a gigantic monstrous fireplace that can produce visions of what he's talking about, apparently, because the fire
horrifying.
just turns into all
Well,
sorts
does
of
it
things.
do that on purpose, or
Well,
is he just hallucinating?
I think that's just him thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a Disney, it's animated.
Yeah, I mean, it's a song and
thing.
dance.
Yeah, right?
Creativity. Who knows?
Yeah. But so yeah, it's a cold, dark room.
Lame. Super
Yeah.
lame.
Not as cool as Maleficent's sweet torn up castle.
Let's talk about
castle is
Maleficent's sweet torn up
amazing.
castle. Do you think she inherited that castle from the Horned King way back in episode 1?
Oh, yeah.
Similar
Yeah.
features. I like that.
Yeah.
I love that molding, decrepit castle, and she's got all the gargoyles too. I love how it changes the color scheme changes. We get that really green eeriness that's
Yeah.
around her castle. Also, they managed to make Sleeping Beauty's castle, King Stephen's castle, I suppose. Really, it's got that kind of Renaissance period, almost a
yeah.
warmth to it that I really love.
Lots
and the
of
stained
color
glass,
with the
lots of
flags and
color.
stained glass.
Yeah, and so to have that kind of contrast with her castle that's just, again, molding is what I think of,
Yeah.
and just crumbling apart, but still has this presence. And isn't it up like on the cliff side? It's because when she does the whole thing where she has her scepter and the clouds swirl up above it, it's up and elevated in this portion of the kingdom. So it's
It's
just
definitely like in the mountainous
Yeah.
Yes.
region.
It
though.
definitely looks like something that's inspired every RPG game that's come.
Exactly, yeah.
This is the destroyed castle where you can find the ancient treasure if you can defeat
Yeah.
the monster inside.
Yes.
precisely.
And it's
precisely.
cool because her little throne room where her goblins dance around the fire looks like a perfect
Yeah.
place for a boss battle in a video game, which I'm pretty sure that it was in a Kingdom Hearts game. Maybe.
Probably so. Actually,
shit.
I
yeah,
think that's
Maleficent
true.
is definitely like the second biggest.
But I think
boss
you actually
in the Kingdom
fight in her
Hearts
throne
games.
room.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Or at least in her castle. I forget.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I played those games.
Speaking of lairs, that reminds me of the word house. And you mentioned last time when you were talking about Frollo that he hasn't been on House of Mouse, and he has been on
He
House of
has?
Mouse.
What is
there
House
was
of
a
House of Mouse was it's a Mickey. I mean, it's just a Disney cartoon, and it's okay. I'm trying to remember like the entire conceit of this thing, but basically, like all of the Disney characters from like every Disney movie come together in this big ballroom, and
Yeah.
like Mickey and Minnie are throwing. It's
They
like,
hang out, and
I
they
don't
show
know, it's like a
animated
hangout.
shorts in
Yeah,
between
it's
as
like the Grammys, but instead
Right,
of like
something
giving
like
out
that.
awards. It's like cartoons. So like everybody's there. You get like Ariel and Eric are there. All the princesses, all the princes, a bunch of the villains, and Mickey and Minnie are up there, and they're just like, "Hey, welcome to the party. Here's a cartoon." And it was just like 30 minutes of just like rando Disney cartoons.
Yeah,
is
but he was
really
on one
weird.
called
Okay.
House of Villains that they did. It was House of Mouse, but it was a special they did called House of Villains where they went to all the villains, and he's
That's awesome.
sitting next to Mad Hatter, who is annoying him.
That's
Probably because his hat's so dumb. I don't know.
I don't know. Isn't Mad Hatter a villain? I feel like that's
I mean,
pushing
he's
it
kind
a
of
bit.
he's an antagonist, but not a villain.
He's hanging out there. That's all I know.
Yeah.
I heard there was tea.
The queen
That-
told him
that
that he
guy
would
had a
lose
bad
his
rap.
head if he didn't go, so he went.
Very
That's
good.
fantastic. Thank you for letting me know about that. So you had just talked about seeing Maleficent's minions dancing around in her throne room. So let's talk about their minions. Again, Frollo doesn't really have minions unless we're counting the Parisian police force.
Yeah, which I think we should at least count the main two that get shown because they get brought up at 3 separate times in the film. The first time you don't know that there's really any connection because they're just bothering Esmeralda.
Yeah.
But then they show back up and when the mill's being burned down, again, Frollo burned down a mill with innocent
He
people
sure
and a
did,
child.
Guy's crazy.
But they show up again there, and then they show up again at the end, and you get a repetition of the horse sitting on the one soldier with the mustache. So I think those ones really do count as like these are the cartoony lackeys of this
Sure.
guy. He does have the whole army under his control because he just tells them like, "Hey, surround Notre Dame and make sure no one leaves." And they just are all like, "Yeah, okay." And there's just like soldiers everywhere.
And they're just chilling there while the entire city is burning down. They're just
Yeah.
like, whatevs. It's cool.
Yeah, so
I don't
Minions
live
to me.
here in
so
Paris.
at least 2 can count as minions, but he does have control of the whole army.
How effective would you say they are at carrying out Frollo's wishes and motivations and bad dealings?
I mean, obviously those 2 are pretty goofy, but the other ones seem pretty good at what they do, being soldiers and guarding doors and trying to kill Phoebus because they think that they accomplished that. They shoot him
true.
right.
They stab him, right? Yeah.
And he falls off into the water, and they're going to go in and like finish the job, and then Frollo's like, "No, let him drown."
See, hubris, man. It's going to get you every
Yep.
time. You
So-
have to demand your enemies' heads on platters. That's
Very
the only way to know
rarely
that they're dead.
do we have minions that actually almost fatally wound our heroes.
And then Maleficent just has, what, like a band of demons?
They're goblins, I think.
Yeah.
They're just like weird mixtures of animals.
Yeah.
Demon-y goblins. I don't
Demon-y,
know. They look like
goblin-y guy.
goblins, but they could be
Where did
demons.
she
as
get
well.
those guys?
Now.
But they're very goofy and not very helpful
They're not
until.
competent.
I mean, when the prince does escape the castle, they put up a pretty good fight. If he didn't have those fairies with him, he would have been dead like 3 times over.
Oh, sure.
They're pretty good at like shooting arrows and stuff, but they
Sure.
they're just no match for the fairies. But they're really bad at looking for things. Real bad.
They are really
We looked
bad.
everywhere for a baby and we just couldn't find one. It's been 16 years. Oh, man.
Cradle.
I don't know what it is about villains that they want. I mean, why not get smart minions? Is it just that like you need to remain in charge in order
if
to
they're
do that? You gotta
smart,
have
then they'll
dumb
overtake
lackeys?
you, or
That's
they'll ask
true.
for more money, or they just be like, "I'm not going to work for you."
I'm gonna throw a baby down a
ridiculous.
well. That's preposterous.
Yeah, I guess you
didn't
take
do
what you can get when it
anything.
comes to minions.
Let's talk about the means to their ends. What were our villains willing to do to accomplish their sinister goals? Frollo set Paris on fire.
Yep, he was totally down for just setting Paris on fire.
And
One of his
committing
goals
genocide.
is genocide.
Yeah.
It's like he
Cricket.
literally pulls that piece of concrete block up and it shows all the ants. He's like, "Let's kill them all. Let's squash them all." And that was his thing. That's what he wanted to do, and that's what he was
Wow.
willing to do. And he was
Yeah.
willing to kill anyone that got in his way. He didn't care. He was like, "Oh, the captain tried to save a child I wanted dead. You're dead now."
Gosh, yeah,
I
bad
keep
man.
making that sound, but I can't help it, you guys.
Yeah, no, it's
He's just the
involuntary.
worst.
Involuntary shudder.
This is literally a villain where in the movie we have one of the heroes, the perhaps the Disney princess of the film, not necessarily princess, singing a song that's a prayer to God to save the outcast because of what this man wants to do to outcast.
Yeah.
And then he or she literally walks by a piece of art in the Notre Dame called The Massacre of the Innocents to contrast Frollo's action with Herod's in the Bible.
Wow.
Because they want him to be like that much of a villain.
Yeah.
Man,
Which he is.
he sure
nailed it.
is. Yeah. Oh, he cannot win. I can't.
I know.
can't.
I'm starting to get uncomfortable because he has to, though.
Well,
Anyway,
no.
it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so let's talk about
Continue
Maleficent.
with it.
Maleficent
Maleficent.
was willing to I mean,
kill a
basically,
child.
again,
All of our villains are willing to kill children is the basic
that's true.
thing.
Yeah.
She didn't try to do it on her own.
True.
She was using her minions at first and being very lazy about it, I might add. She was not looking for anyone.
Yeah, and she just cursed her to die. And at first it was like, oh yeah, she seems murderous. But then she has opportunity to kill her. She didn't have to go through with the curse and be like, oh, here's this magical thing. Poke your finger so you fall asleep.
True,
It's
she
like
could've
she could
just
just
slashed her
like
right there.
killed her right there.
just killed her,
I can just turn
yeah.
into a dragon anytime I want. I don't understand.
Now that is a cool party trick.
I
is the
feel like
thing.
she didn't really want anybody to die. I really do feel like that because she had multiple opportunities and she knew that those good fairies were there because reverse the thing. She's not stupid.
Are you telling me that the Disney film Maleficent, starring Angelina Jolie as Maleficent, is the true canon story here?
No, because I've never seen that movie and I will never see that movie.
It was fine.
What I'm telling you is that her version of evil is not murdery. It's just that she's sad and miserable, so she wants everyone else to be
It's
sad
just
and miserable.
over dramatic.
Yeah.
Dramatic and egocentric, yeah. That's
Okay.
very interesting. Okay.
Oh boy, I'm so.
you should be
upset.
afraid.
I'm
be
very afraid. I don't want this.
Yeah, but this is the thing, is that iconic as Maleficent is, she came from such an early movie. They just weren't telling the same kind of stories that they went on to tell.
Yeah.
That's true.
We'll
That is
see.
true. As we went on, they became less of fairy tales. And of course, then Hunchback of Notre Dame is Disney's real first time at taking an adult story. Like,
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
an adult story, not a fairy tale for kids. And not that those fairy tales were for
I was gonna
kids.
say, even
Right.
the fairy
But-
tales weren't
but-
quite for kids.
yeah.
But yes, it's a very different sort
So
of
it's a very
adaptation.
different adaptation for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh boy. All right. Well, let's talk about how they bid it so that I can feel better about something. I can't really handle all of this anymore.
Oh, as we jump into that,
Yes.
you had mentioned you were both curious about why there was this molten, it's actually molten lead up in
Oh!
Notre Dame. And it's because that's what they used to repair the roof with. And so this is a thing that would be in older buildings, I guess. And that's why it shows them heating it up, because they have it there ready so that they can repair the roof as they need to, because it would be, I guess, too hard to take it up. I don't know. I didn't
That
look into
makes
like
sense.
why,
Sure.
but that is a thing that they would have in there. And that is like the classic ending of Notre Dame, is the molten lead pouring down all around the
Okay.
building. So that is like the iconic way that story always ends.
Wow.
Okay.
I
Well,
didn't
cool.
know that.
Thank you for telling us that. Yeah, because I think when we originally talked about it, we were just like, why do you just have like bowls of lava up in your tower? I don't understand. That seems really impractical. Your thing makes way more sense.
Also, I do wonder when I was watching this film, did God just kill Frollo? Did God just go, this guy's too evil to live? Because that gargoyle totally came to life and was just like, I'm taking you down to hell with me.
You know what?
I feel like God would just like release the soul of a demon that was like locked in that gargoyle and was like, you can go ahead and take him. And he was like,
hang on,
okay,
hang on. We're
bye.
presuming a lot. First of all, we're presuming that demons exist within the universe of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Secondly, that they are trapped within the gargoyles around Notre Dame. Thirdly, are Victor, Hugo, and Laverne, are they demons that are just like palling around with Quasimodo? I'm really confused
I mean,
now.
according to the commentary, they were just discarded gargoyles that weren't good enough to actually make it into the building.
Oh, so they're like the kindliest demons?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're the demons that couldn't make it into hell.
Got it. All right.
They were left
Wait.
here. I don't know. I'm saying is that this gargoyle comes to life, and maybe that's a hallucination. Maybe that's just a callback to hallucinations that Frollo was having earlier.
Sure.
As the gargoyle was
Alternatively, the
breaking.
gargoyle really comes to life and drags him to hell. I'm good
Yeah.
with that because he's a bad, bad man.
But it seems like even God himself was just like, no, I can't let this go on any further.
Ka-chunk. Yeah.
It's like once he started quoting super, he's like, oh, I got this. I got to put a
I
stop
have
to
to put a
this.
stop to it, right? I can't. I cannot abide useless people," said the Lord.
I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah, so he falls into the flaming wreckage
Yeah.
of Paris, presumably lands in a big old puddle of molten lead,
Yeah.
and that can't be a fun way to go.
No, probably not.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually very hot, is the thing.
I see what you did there. No, I was just thinking
Guys, I
because
wish that you could see the look of derision that Elizabeth just gave me. It was very good.
I can see it. It is very good.
I was just thinking about Maleficent's death and about how there is that trope of the falling to the death that the villains have so often, and that hers, we get that awesome hissing sound and the scorch marks, but yeah, molten lava is pretty awesome actually.
And And I still do hold to, I don't think Maleficent died, because everything I read was like she was stabbed in the heart, and I was like, how do you know that's where her heart was? Like she was just stabbed in her large dragon body. Did they say that she was stabbed in the heart?
The three fairies sent the magical sword forward, so presumably they know where.
I mean, as far as I know, she was just stabbed, not necessarily in the heart.
Okay, listen, I don't want to presume how dragon anatomy works.
Well, that's my thing. I feel like everybody else is presuming that. I'm trying not to.
You're so progressive.
I don't know where that is.
Okay, as far as we know, according to the movie, Maleficent died.
Yes.
Yes.
I think so.
There's just no evidence for it, though.
She poofed into nothing!
Right, which she poofed into the castle to begin with.
That is true.
Oh.
She has the power to poof.
She absolutely...
If she died, where's the body?
Gothel didn't leave a body.
No good police person is going to say that this person's dead. They're going to look for
like
it.
a billion years in 5
There's just the
seconds.
cloak left.
Okay.
But textually, it is like accepted culturally that she died, yes.
Okay.
I just don't see the evidence for it. Which makes her stronger in my book, because she literally didn't kill her. She was just like, well, this was a bad decision. I made some mistakes. I'm going to go back and think about this and come
Lesser
back
Disney
again.
cabals still to this day believe that Maleficent is alive and well and just traveled the world.
Wow.
But hey, stabbed in the heart and then, poofing into nothing, probably not as hardcore as falling from the top of Notre Dame, clutching a screaming gargoyle head and falling into molten lead.
Definitely not.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Indeed.
Oh boy.
Okay.
All right. So, so we are here now to our final category, and because we are in, this is our very last quarterfinal, and then it's going to be semifinals, and then it'll be the grand finale, which I'm very excited about. But here in the quarterfinals, instead of stringing up some princess or MCU hero, weirdly, for a little bit there, it got really conceptual. But we have decided that we're going to be putting these two villains together into a gladiatorial arena. So we have Maleficent, a magic-wielding fairy who can turn into a literal giant dragon and put curses on people, versus Frollo, a bigot.
Yeah. So
Are there steps?
that's a good question.
Presumably there are steps in the seating around the gladiatorial arena, but not on the gladiatorial arena floor.
Fair.
That's just like dirt.
I just quickly want to throw some bonus points towards Frollo and then take them back away.
Okay.
So
I'm into this.
one of the things we didn't mention, I think, is one of the most evil things he did, that I think it's overlooked because the other stuff he does is really, really evil, but this one's pretty harsh, is that Quasimodo spends a lot of time up there in that tower building these wooden figures in this wooden town, and he just smashes it to hell and then burns Esmeralda's figure right after he makes it. And I was like, dude, that is
So mean.
terrible. That was like that guy. That was Quasi's whole life there.
It's a bad man.
That you just destroyed for no reason. But to take those points away, fun fact: his big monstrous black horse, ironically, is named Snowball.
No way! Is
Yep,
that true?
that's true.
Wow.
Not said in the movie, but by the creators, this horse was always known as Snowball.
How fun.
So I think that takes those points away.
All right. Okay, you know what? I will give Frollo Snowball in the gladiatorial arena. So it's Frollo and Snowball versus Maleficent.
That's a really fast horse. That horse is pretty monstrous.
He's a very big, fast horse.
So what I want to do is pitch to you how I think this is going to go real quick before we do some back and forth debating. I just want to pitch an idea.
Let's do this. Yes.
I think Frollo is hunting down Maleficent because of witchcraft. That's the reason that he's after her.
Yes,
He's like,
yes.
you're a witch.
Okay.
I have to take you down. He would bring his soldiers, but this is an arena situation, so probably not. It's just what I was thinking of before I
Well,
knew
they
the
got
arena
trapped in the
situation.
thorns outside of the arena,
Yeah,
right?
of course. And he would light everything on fire, so everything on the arena is on fire currently because he's a pyromaniac. And then he sees her and falls in love with her. But maybe she falls in love with him too, being attracted to the hatred and his the art of hatred that he has, perhaps, and his love for fire. Because I think she probably has a love for fire too, turning into dragons. Okay. And he tells her, either you will be mine or you burn in hell. And she embraces him and says, "Why not both?" The two burn to death in the arena, making out.
I'm sorry. I didn't think that was going to go there. Well,
that was my little story I came up with.
Lovely adventure romance.
Because to me, I feel like these two could be like the queen and king of evil. I could see them together. They have like facial features that are very similar. Like I could see them standing next to each other, just like overtaking the world.
But when she meets Jafar, she's gonna kill Frollo and get with Jafar, right?
I don't think Jafar has anything on Frollo.
All right, okay.
Wow.
So we've got a literal magical dragon fairy lady and Frollo and
If
Snowball.
all he has is his horse,
A bigot and his horse.
physically she wins this battle because
has
he doesn't do his own killing unless it's like poor Romani women on the stairs of church seeking for sanctuary and babies getting thrown on wells. As far as we know, he doesn't run into battle with a sword or anything. His captain's not there. His soldiers aren't there.
He doesn't have magic.
And she's a dragon.
Yeah,
That can apparently just throw that sword through her. I mean, I guess it's not a magic sword, but
Yeah, no, I like that. Wow, I'm still thinking about your magical romance between.
Can't listen. The reason why, what are we going to do? Are we going to combine them and call them Frolificent?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
this is not a thing.
Hashtag
We can't
Maleficent.
have
It's a thing, Sarah. It's a thing. We made
round
it happen.
14 cannot
It's
be
really
Scar
fetch.
versus Frollo and Maleficent together as one unit, one flesh.
Okay, no, that is true. We can't do that. However, this is just, one part of the death match.
yeah.
So we're still, thinking about these two side by side. I personally am going to have to go to bat for Frollo. I think he has to take this.
I have always believed, and I thought that we were of an understanding here, Elizabeth, from day one, that the gladiatorial arena portion of the death match is the most important part of the death match, because we don't do scoring on this show.
The thing that like, keeps me from coming to a definite conclusion is I don't like the arena deathmatch thing because one of my favorite heroes is Batman, and Batman can beat anyone, but not in an arena deathmatch. If you just put Batman in the arena and don't give him anything or any way to plan and say, fight, I don't know, Galactus, I don't know, just some big guy, he's just like, okay, well, I can't. That's not going to happen. The whole thing about Batman is that he can plan and he can do this. So, like, Frollo without his army...
Frollo necessarily, but yes.
But Frollo without his... But of course, Frollo's going to lose to a dragon.
Okay, Frollo in the
but
Batmobile.
Frollo's not necessarily going to lose if he has the whole army of Paris up
Sure.
against this dragon that could fall to a magic sword. It's like
Yeah. No, I
all
see
of those
what you're
soldiers
saying.
were pretty
I see what you're
competent.
saying.
So I don't know. In that situation, it would throw things off. But the gladiatorial arena situation, he's easily destroyed.
Are you saying that this entire podcast has been a farce?
Look, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
This podcast is for
Because
fun.
I am. I'm saying it's a fun farce, and I don't want Frollo to continue, is what I'm saying.
So I will come down to this. If the podcast is for the purpose of picking the most Disney villain, Maleficent wins hands down. If the purpose is picking the most evil villainous villain,
Yeah.
Frollo wins hands down. So you have to go with whatever the podcast says it's looking for.
Yes. You know what? This podcast, above all else, is a democracy, and I will concede if the two of you believe that Frollo should move forward.
Should we do a vote?
You
This
did.
isn't a
You
bad
both
idea.
said
That's-
Frollo.
That's the problem. It depends on what the podcast is looking for. Because I said,
What is this podcast? Hey,
if it's looking for Disney villain,
We're like
Maleficent.
12 episodes in. What's this podcast about?
It's true.
you do have to narrow it down when you come to the end, these finals like this.
Yeah. Yeah, when you get down to the finals, I think that's absolutely right. You really do have to start thinking about what makes like a Disney villain what they are. But I think he's got the great song and dance number. He's illustrated really sinisterly.
Mm-hmm.
He is not only the villain of the piece, but also the antagonist of the piece because they're not always both.
Yeah.
He has minions to speak of. I mean, he's not a bad Disney villain as Disney villains go. His show. What's strange is that this movie didn't do well. So it's like I wonder if
It did really well in France. Surprisingly, they thought that people in France were going to hate it, and apparently it did super well.
That's so
I'm
interesting.
really surprised by that.
Wow. Yeah, no, I didn't know. I don't know. I think there's an argument to be made for Frollo here. I really do. So we can vote. My vote is for Frollo. And I love me some Maleficent, y'all. I love her. Love to hate her. But
My
she's
vote-
just not that villainous. She just looks really cool.
My vote is for Maleficent.
There.
I feel like I
Tiebreaker,
need to ask.
Tiebreaker guest.
I need to
Tiebreaker
ask
win.
how many points does just like pure iconic get you? Because Maleficent
lot
is
is the thing.
the very most iconic villain, not only of like Disney movies, I think, but of a lot of other things. Like
No, you're
she would go
completely right
way up
about
there.
that.
Like she is super iconic. It's what you think of when you think of evil. And so I don't know. It's really tough because one of these is real world evil. One of them is iconic fiction evil.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that this podcast is looking for the most Disney of villains, not the most evil of villains. And because of that, I have to vote Maleficent.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I
Frollo is
respect
the most
that.
evil villain.
We're shaking hands across the table with
They
our
are,
man, Vinton
yes.
Bayne.
I have palpitations. I
This
was so
was
afraid.
very intense.
I didn't like it. It wasn't fun. I mean, it was good and fun, and I enjoyed it. I love recording with the both of you, but just having to,
It was like watching the ballots on the 9th of November.
oh my God, it was similarly like that. Okay, so the winner of round 12 then is Maleficent. I am relieved and very excited that we never have to talk about Frollo ever again.
Yeah.
So our winner is Maleficent. Thank goodness. I didn't want to talk about Frollo anymore. I was done with him. He's a bad man. I didn't want to revisit his film. Maleficent will be moving on to round 14, in which she will be facing Scar from The Lion King.
Now that
very
is-
excited about that.
That is pretty exciting.
It's
I
gonna
have
be
to
very
say. That's
good,
a
yes.
fun
That's going to
matchup.
be a close one, too, because I think Scar is super evil.
Scar
I
is
love
also
Scar.
Scar is great.
Yeah.
Scar is excellent.
Yeah.
And yeah, a murderer and wanted to kill children, but did not commit genocide in Paris. And is almost nothing like our current political climate.
I am very glad that I don't go down in history on this podcast as the person that made Frollo win. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Because I had to argue for him a lot because I really do think he's evil, but I don't want to
he
be that
is
person.
absolutely
No,
evil.
yeah,
I don't
okay,
think
here's
there's
the thing.
Any argument
Yes,
against that?
no, yeah.
But you're right. It does come down to the spirit of the podcast. I
Yes.
think you
Yeah.
nailed it. I think
Yeah.
you made the right choice.
Yes. Again, for the folks out there who are saying, no, you need to pick the most evil guy, we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. The world
Iconic
is dark enough, my
evil.
friends.
Over real life evil. Every time,
Yes.
please.
Yes, please. Because we can deal with those. I don't know what we're supposed to do about the real life ones. That's going to do it for us this week, you guys. If you have anything to add to this conversation, you can hit us up on Twitter. You can use the hashtag DVDM. I know deathmatch is one word, but it's too late now. We set a precedent. Nothing we can do at this point. You can find us on
Also,
Twitter.
DVD was taken.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. What a
Pretty
digital
easily
video disc.
overly taken.
You can't really do that. You can find us on Twitter at Common Room Cast. You can find me personally at Elsa Grab Assault.
I'm at Lisbeth Ray 555.
And I'm at Flesh Eater. And you can hear more from me on the Excelsior podcast on the Common
Yes!
Room Radio Network, where I talk about comic books because I have one singular interest, guys. It's comic books. That's all I talk about on my Twitter, too.
It's pretty good. It's fantastic.
Excellent.
Yes. Vinton, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Yeah.
We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I love all of your insight. Thank you for bringing us all of that information. It was very, very good.
Thank you for flipping the VHS.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
that
always
was
wanted
so
to be a
great.
part of that.
Yeah, that just needs to be, we need to somehow make that a part of every single podcast that we do always, all the time.
I'll just record any flip the VHS for you and just email it right over to you. I don't have to be here.
Yeah.
Just tell
hey,
me the
you
episode,
and
I'll do
Daphne
it.
are doing something about a master and commander. Is that true?
I believe there was a commander and also a master involved.
Was the commander mastering the, anyway,
That's Can I Just Say. Do check it out.
so yeah, we're gonna be back in 2 weeks with Ursula versus Jafar and another very special guest who I know who it is, but I'm not gonna tell you. We're gonna keep it a surprise.
You're
But I
gonna
think
be
you'll
very excited.
Yeah, if you like this show, if you want us to do more stuff like this, if you want to help us create the shows that you enjoy, then all you have to do is head on over to patreon.com/commonroomradio, where you can kick us $1 a month or whatever you can afford, and you can get all kinds of excellent stuff over there, including access to our Patreon-only live shows. There are gag reels for Mighty Fine Shindig, which we were all three on. There's also gag reels for Excelsior over there. It's amazing. It's a blast. It's a lot of fun. And I think that's going to do it for us. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Once again, from Common Room Radio, I'm Sarah K. Bazant.
And I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And I'm Vinton Bayne.
Bye!